Hey guys, Shane here. So welcome to this inbox review of Academy's 1/35 scale M4A3 Sherman with T-34 Calliope rocket launcher system. So this is a very late war version of the Sherman. This particular case was used by the US military, and someone had the great idea of slapping a multi-barrel rocket launcher system onto the turret. I'm not entirely sure how combat effective these machines were, as they came in very late in the war. However, though, they did see some combat use. So this is the first kit I've ever taken a look at from Academy of their Sherman series. So I'm going to be very curious to see how well this kit shapes up compared to the kits we've taken a look at from Asuka and Dragon. So first things first, I do excuse this little bit of water damage. This is not how this kit was sent to me. I accidentally left it near a point of the shed that leaked and a bit of water got on the box. So it doesn't come like that, and normally the box art is quite attractive. It's in that standard box design that the newer Academy kits come with, which is quite attractive. And this kit is actually a hybrid between an Academy and Italeri parts. So that the actual A4, or should I say the M4A3 75mm Sherman here is actually an Academy kit, and then the T-34 rocket system is actually from Italeri. So we get a really attractive box art of the system firing. We get a small colour plate of the vehicle, as well as a pretty extensive colour call out, which is actually really handy. I wish more companies did this, because if you're a new modeler, you don't have to open up the box and figure out what colours you need. You can just basically take a glance and buy them as you need them. So that's handy. On the other side, we have some marking options. All these vehicles are going to be basically 1945 on. One thing just to immediately point out, as these parts, when I first got them, are bagged. So I've already unbagged these to have a look at them. So when you do buy this kit new, all the sprues are in fact bagged. So we do get quite a bit of plastic in this kit. We get 2 instruction manuals, like I said. One part is for the Academy kit and the other is for the Italeri parts. We also get a small photo etch fret and decal sheet and a load of plastic. So as always, we're going to take a look at the instruction manuals first. We're going to go through this as quick as possible, and then we're going to get down to the plastic. So starting with the Academy instruction pamphlet. First things first, very standard style black and white. We've got the picture of the kit, and then we get really handy colour call out in several different brands. We have Humbrol, GSI Krios, Life Colour, Tester / Model Master, Breville and Vallejo. However, it's not very difficult to get a couple of colour converter charts online. It's very easy to get your hands on them. As always, like in all AFV kits, our fighting vehicle kits, our instructions immediately take us to the running gear. So our sprockets, we do have options to sprockets, so again, do check your reference material on what tank you're modelling. We do have options for return rollers and road wheels, again with the disc shape, press steel, and then with the spoke version. So we do have a couple of options. The nice thing with this kit is that the actual bogie assembly is very straightforward. It's not going to be like the Asuka models and even the M3 versions of this for the Tacom M3 family, which are a little bit of a bastard to put together. These aren't too bad. These will go together pretty quick, and you just get your standard pivot style suspension. It's not entirely how the real ones worked, but it's handy enough, and most of us don't really get too upset about these things. Step 3, we're moving on to our lower hull assembly. So it does have us adding extenders onto the lower hull, as well as a plug here for the lower hull tub. Again, that's not a big problem. You don't have to worry about that, having to fill that, because you're never going to see it. Then we're moving on to the rear engine deck here with our small hatch A3 style engine access hatch, and then our larger exhaust deflectors. Again, very reminiscent to Dragon Shermans. We have our extenders for the transmission cover here. Again, nothing that we've never seen before. Then we're adding our bogies and sprockets to the lower hull tub. I tend not to do this. I leave these off until the very end and paint them separately, just to make life easier for myself. Step 5, we have the late war style transmission cover. You can always tell it's a one-piece cast with a very sharp angle. So the easiest way to tell the late war transmission or differential covers. Then we're adding the engine deck to the upper hull with the very large style cooling grills that are quite identifiable with the A3 family. Then we're moving on to our driver and co-driver hatches. These seem to be pretty well detailed, so it'll be interesting to see what these look like in plastic. Then we're moving on to the upper hull here, adding our fuel filler caps, our convoy lights, some of the filter systems for the air conditioning system, if you will. A24, gonna have to pay attention. It tells you to remove the, as you guys can see it, A24 tells us to remove the locking pin here for this fuel cap. I'll have to check my reference to see how accurate that is. Then again, it's inside the splash guard for the turret ring, so you might not see it that well either way, but still be aware of that. Now we're moving on to more upper hull, step 8. Again, we have some photo etch brush guards, which is very handy because the kit supplied ones are massively overscaled. So we do have photo etch, which is great, and as well for the brush guards for the convoy lights. Then we're adding some of our periscopes here, the direct vision periscopes for the driver and co-driver. Again, something that's more found with the A3 family than the earlier variants of Sherman or the other family members of the Sherman class of tank. As the thing about Sherman is A1, A2, A3, what have you, they're not built in chronological order. Sometimes they're built at the same time, so don't assume that an A3 is a later version of Sherman than an A1. That is not necessarily true. In fact, it's not really true. So that's what makes them a little bit of a nightmare to research, because all the marks for the most part were being built in parallel with each other. Some factories shifted attention from say A1 to A3 or whatever as orders changed, but for the most part they were being built around the same time. Again, step 9, we're adding our rather large deflector, so a lot of the detail up here is going to be hidden. So that's going to be interesting to see how well that goes together. It seems to be one piece. Then we have the extenders again to where our deflector fits into. The tools are pretty straightforward. Again, most Sherman kits, the tools are always a little bit passed over. They're not the best detailed in the world. We have a multi-piece rear stowage shelf here. Again, nothing really to write home about. It's not really that big of a detail for me, but still it's nice that it's there. Then we're moving on to the third details, and this is where we're going to have to pay a lot of attention as modelers, because it's going to ask us to do some silly things, and this is, I most imagine, due to lack of communication between Italvery and Academy, but we'll get to this in a moment. Again, we have our late war mantlet assembly. It does give us a slide molded barrel, and then it ruins it by adding a separate cap piece for the muzzle itself. So it kind of undoes the benefit of having a slide molded barrel, because you're going to get a bloody seam line anyway. However, you could use it if you have the patience to sand and blend the muzzle brake here, or the muzzle should I say. Again, they're not expensive to buy, turned aluminium barrels for the 75 Sherman family. Then we're mounting our M1919 coax machine gun, and then the gun assembly into the turret, which is upper and lower half. Again, we've seen this a million times before in most Shermans. That's how most turrets go together. This is where things get a wee bit weird. If I draw your attention to this little sub-paragraph here, or subtext, it's giving us measurements, so 32 mil in, 4 millimeters up, or should I say 3 mil up, and then I want you to cut a 4x2 mil slot on each side of the hull. Now this is one of the biggest drawbacks to this kit, which is really unfortunate, because up until now the kit's pretty easy to put together, and Academy are known for giving modelers cheat lines. They will mold in where we're meant to cut or drill parts. They do try to look after us. However, what this is telling us to do is to cut a slot onto both sides of a curved surface that must line up 100% to each other, and this is so we can fit the arms for the T-34 rocket system. This is one of the big drawbacks of this kit, and I really wish I hadn't done it. And I am certainly not cutting into the hull or the turret sides of my A3. I'm going to actually use these as a mark And I'm not going to cut into the model, but I'm actually just going to mark out where they're meant to go and then either grid glue it in place or something like that. The margin for error, especially for me, of cutting into a model is just far, far too high. So that's one of the real drawbacks. However, it's not a deal breaker, but just be aware of it. Another thing actually I need to draw your attention to with this turret, which we'll come back to when we look at it again in plastic, is most A3 turrets are inaccurate in one regard. I know for a fact that obviously this kit has it, the Italeri kit has this issue, and so does the Tamiya. So the three makes, and I believe the Tamiya, or should I say the Dragon kit, may have this issue too, that on the gunner side of the turret, they have an integrally cast cheek armor that's thicker than the rest of the tank, and that cheek armor is not molded in, so you're going to have to add that with putty. Again, I'll come back to that later and I'll further explain that, but that is something to be aware of that you have to add yourself. To bring this model up to par, you're going to do a little bit of work. However, it's not actually a deal breaker for me. If anything, it's a good thing because it just gives you a guinea pig to basically try out new modeling skills. I don't have any problems with that because that's actually good. Anything that teaches you new little techniques is actually a good thing in my book. And they're not big things either, they're quite simple to do. Then we're moving on to step 12, moving on with the turret. Again, we have our split hatch design here. We also have an option for an all-fission cupola, so again, do inspect your reference material to see which one you're meant to be using. Cool little note here actually, and I'm kind of happy they did this, and I hope they have more than one, is if you look here at the radio antenna mount. So on the real Fakel, these are made out of springs so they can flex. So if you've seen the movie Fury, you will see that they have the antennas tied back and these are flexing back. And Academy has given us the option. So they've given us a straight one and then one that's bent back at an angle to simulate the antenna being tied at an angle to basically reduce the silhouette of the Fakel. That is really cool, and I'm definitely using that on my Fury. I hope there's more of them in this kit, but we'll see how many we get when we get to the sprues. Then we're adding our loader periscope. It comes with brush guard, always nice to see. Let's see how well that can scale that is. For some reason I suspect it won't be. Step 13, more turret details. We're adding a small bit of PE here to the top of the gun barrel. So we have two options of how the linkage between the gunner sight and the T-34 Calliope or Calliope rocket system works. It's literally just an arm linkage to the launcher itself. The gunner elevates the gun, and I think he's got a graduated sight for doing some basic maths. These are not designed to be accurate. These are area suppression weapons. You just basically get a basic bearing and elevation, and you just dump as much fire into it as quick as you can. Basically how the Katyusha rocket system works. And just like the modern day, was it Grad 21, isn't it? The type of rocket systems they're using in Syria and Ukraine. They're very dangerous, but they're not designed to be accurate. Nor was this. So we do have two options here. We're also adding our commander's aiming feign. So it'll be interesting to see how well or lack of detail that might be. Again, adding hatches. We're adding some of the spring systems for the hatch open assist, which is good. Believe it or not, actually, if you got hit in a Sherman, you had one of the better chances of actually surviving bailing out. They weren't as big of a death trap as one has been led to believe. It's not as true as you think it is. Yes, they lost a lot of Shermans in the war, but most of the crews actually survived. You had a better chance of getting killed in the US Army being an infantryman than you did being a tanker, and that's actually what the US Department of Defense found after the war when they were crunching the numbers to see what they'd learned when the war ended. Now we're moving on to the rocket system. So as you can see, this is upper and lower, so there is going to be a seam line. However, from what I've read online, the seam is very minimal as long as you do a good job at joining both halves. This is really good. And now we're going to switch from this manual onto the second manual, Manual 2. It's so nice that they told us. And now we're moving on, a little bit more photo etch work for the support arm. This is the linkage between the gun barrel and the support arm for the rocket system. Again, it's pretty simple. Now you can see what they want us to do with these slots. So we put these two corresponding slots in. Good luck to you trying to line those up, because it's not a perfectly smooth or even perfectly round shape, the Sherman turret. So trying to get that to fit together is going to be a bit of a bastard, just so you know. and that's why I'm not going to cut into my turret. I'm going to do it a different way. We also have a option for an M9 or not M19, M2 heavy machine gun, HB or .5 or 50 cal, my deuce, whatever you want to call it. To be honest with you, the Calliope Arm Shermans never had these. They just took them off because you have a big dirty rocket system on top of your turret. So yeah, it's good luck to you trying to use it. But again, these are okay. Let's have a look what they look like in plastic. Most companies fall flat on their face doing 50 cal machine guns for some reason. The Draga ones are massively overscaled, so let's see how bad or how good the Academy ones are. And then the final step is we're adding the linkage between the rocket system and the gun. If we're doing the third option, so that's if you see this tree here, if we're doing the third option, we're just putting the 50 cal, and the third marking option is just basically a normal M4A3 without the launcher system. Then we have rubber band tracks. Again, we'll have a look at those properly in a moment. Apparently you have to actually melt these tracks together. If what I've read is correct, that superglue doesn't work on these. Again, we'll have a look at those, and there's plenty of aftermarket available for these tracks. Then we have our marking options. We have 3 marking options. 2 are rocket armed and 1 is a standard M4A3 Sherman. So option number 1 is US 12th Armored Division, that place in France, March 1945. Second option, US 14th Armored Division, Germany, early 45. So these are very late war vehicles. These are all basically used either on the German border or in Germany itself during the invasion of Germany. And then the last one is US 95th Infantry Division. I believe the 95th is famous from the Battle of the Bulge, if I remember. They're the guys on that ridge line. I think it's the 95th. I might be wrong there. But anyway, 95th Infantry Division, Germany, January 45. So these are all late war vehicles. And just so you know, if I often see this online when people asking, are M4A3s appropriate for Normandy? And the answer is no. They didn't really come in until around October, November. They even missed the Ardennes, or not the Ardennes. They missed Operation Market Garden too. So these are perfect from the Battle of the Bulge onwards, as the A3 was a bit late coming into the fray. And then on the back we have a big sprue map here. Again, some people like this, I couldn't care less, but there you go, you have a sprue map. And then you have this big box here of all the parts you don't use. So there you go, nice and solid. Now we're moving on to the parts themselves, so let's go and have a quick look at the decal sheet. Very simple. We have our allied stars, both with the bar and just on their own, a couple of tactical markings. These are printed by Academy themselves, copyrighted 2015, so this kit isn't that old, or at least this version of the kit. They give us these over-painted olive drab stars. I will not be using them because that's going to be a nightmare trying to match that to the olive drab you paint your vehicle with. If you're going to do the over-painted ones, just literally over-paint your decals with paint, as simple as that. And then we get a small 4-wedge fret here. We have some of the linkages for the rocket system and then a few brush guards, as well as our siren guard. So that's pretty good, pretty run-of-the-mill 4-wedge you get in Shermans, but I'm not complaining. Looks so good so far. Or so far, so good, should I say. I said that backwards for some reason. Anyway, moving on to our lower hull tub. And this one thing's going to start getting a bit weird. I don't know how well you boys can see it, but I need a pokey stick so you guys can have a look. There's these massive punch marks here. I have a feeling that this was so they could do different variants. These look like locator tabs. So maybe that was for maybe doing a HVSS suspension system. And then they just molded these plates for the HV or for the VVSS on top of that. That's what that looks like. So these are going to have to go. Don't know how well again you guys can see. There you go. You see how it catches the light. Very strange. We have some basic detail here on the underside. Again, this massive slot here. So there's a plug that goes in. I imagine you're going to have to fill that, but I don't care because you can't see it, so it's not a problem to me. But basic detail down here. So again, it's kind of off to an unusual start. Moving on to our rubber band tracks. Again, don't ask me what variant of track these are because I'm terrible at remembering Sherman tracks, and I like the Sherman. So you have your normal rubber chevron type of track, and you guys can't even see it, and I can't even see it on camera. Where are we? There we go. So yeah, these are quite heavy. Let's let me just put something light down so you guys can actually see them. They're quite heavy. Detail's okay. they're not full of pin marks like you often get with final tracks. Quite stiff. They're quite stiff, which is not always a bad thing. Sometimes I find final tracks to be a little bit too soft and then they look like they're rubber, as after all these things were made out of steel with rubber caps on either side, or should I say rubber pads. From what I understand, super glue does not work on these. I might be wrong, but that's what I've read, and you have to basically melt them in place. You can have a big dirty melt point when you use them. However, there's plenty of aftermarket. Even AFE Club have their own rubber bands for these, as well as Bronco have link-to-link tracks or indie links, which are like meant to be a nightmare to put together because they're multiple part. But these are the kit tracks. They're okay. Okay, moving on to the plastic. So this is, what sprue is this? This is a sprue, and as you can see, there's a lot of upper hull details. So we have our large single door style A3 engine deck with the large engine grills that are located here and here. Detail so far is good. However, I'm seeing something kind of strange on this kit. It's not a massive drawback to me, but just a little bit unusual, and I'm going to draw your attention to it, if I can get us to focus. So these are the periscopes, and these are massively out of scale. These look like they're like blow up or marshmallow like style periscopes. So I wonder what they're taking their measurement from, and some bizarre details on this kit are massively out of scale. Some of them are not, but the moulding is, to be fair, is quite nice. So that's a pretty big periscope. It might not be as jarring once it's mounted into the tank, but just something to bear in mind. We have our hatch for the engine deck, some of the swivel mounts for our periscopes. What this is, and it's not used in the kit, so this is for the HVSS mud flaps that extend out the side of the vehicle, as are these are like the support brackets for them. Now I'm going to draw our attention directly to the upper hull. I'm going to have to talk about this for a few minutes. So the upper hull is actually quite crisp. The detail and moulding quality is nice. We actually do have a very nice foundry mark here. I don't know how you guys can see, but I'll draw your attention here to the seam line, or should I say the weld seams. They're sunken. On Sherman, welds are not sunken, they're actually raised. It's a raised bead that they use. So this is one of the upgrades you're going to have to do yourself, fellas, that you're going to actually have to add your own weld seams. I'm actually kind of looking forward to doing that, because it just allows you to get a little bit more hands-on with your build. I have a feeling that Academy took the assumption that, like German vehicles, American and Allied Shermans basically just use the same type of weld. They did not. The weld here is okay, but you're going to have to basically, like, it's meant to be like this. They're meant to be raised. Not hard to do. Just mask off the area and put some putty down. You can also use stretch sprue and just sculpt in your weld beads. Not a deal breaker by any stretch of the imagination, but just something that I felt you need to be aware of. We're moving on here to the brush guards, and they are monstrously out of scale. Look how thick they are. But luckily we have photo etch replacements. Thank God for that. We have a part of the stowage rack on the back of the engine plate. We have some of our brush guards, again quite thick, but it's very easy to find photo etch upgrade sets that have those included. These can be a little bit tricky to form though, so just be aware of that if you use photo etch for it. Again, our fuel filler caps, they're okay. They're a little bit chunky in places, they're a bit kind of spongy, but not too bad. We have the tensioners for our idler, for our idlers. However, this is a cool little detail here, and this is you very rarely see these in plastic on Shermans. These details here are actually the convoy rear view mirrors that Shermans actually had. They never really used them in combat. When you do see them on Shermans in Europe, the war is basically over, so that's why they've mounted them on. And they're basically rear view mirrors that fit onto the side of the hull. Now there's two massive sink marks here, but what I would do is I just use a little bit of kitchen foil or aluminium or aluminum foil, depending where you're in the world, super glue it in, cut it into shape, and you're fine. Because trying to fill and sand that would be next to impossible, or at least very tricky. The front fenders here are very, very thick, as you guys can see, again, very thick, but not hard to fix. Just take a Dremel or a motor tool with a dental burr and just grind down the edges, and it'll fool the eye into thinking it's the scale. So that's that sprue. Again, there's quite a bit going on. Moving on to, where's the sprue number on this? X sprue. So again, we have our end caps here for the differential covers. That is very reminiscent of most Shermans. Again, if you've ever built a Dragon Sherman, that's very normal to you. We have our final drives. Then we have, again, massively overscaled brush guards for the siren. Same here for the convoy lights. These are monstrously out of scale. Jesus. That's pretty hideous, but we do have options, so that's okay. We have our Bow 1919 machine gun, our convoy lights, the siren itself. Again, these are actually nice little detail parts. Like, the quality of detail and the quality of casting varies wildly, not from sprue to sprue, but from literally from part to part. These are appalling. And now luckily Academy copped this and realised this and gave us photo etch to replace them, because that would have made most people laugh at the kit. And in other places it's really nice. It's kind of a bizarre kit. We have our direct vision cupola and hatch here. Again, solid plastic, a lot of pin marks in the interface, but you're never going to see that. We have more armoured covers for our periscopes. They do seem a little bit big, like a bit long. Then the periscopes themselves, and again, these are very chunky and out of scale. Yeah, it's very bizarre. I'm not sure what they use to scale these. Again, we have our... Why did I say it's in again? It's almost like you guys can talk back. Then we have our loader's hatch with two large pin marks. They're going to have to be sanded and filled. We have our extenders, again, big bloody pin marks that need filling. We have options for drive sprockets, both the solid and spoke version. The detail on the driver and co-driver hatch is actually quite nice. It's quite crisp. Full marks there. However, if you flip it over, we do have quite a few pin marks that must be filled if you have this thing with a crew sitting inside it. Again, that's a little bit of an unfortunate thing, but you kind of get this with kits at this price range. Then we have our late war differential cover, again very easy to identify because it looks like a bust, and the crews had a nickname, or the manufacturers had a nickname for this. It wasn't Mae West because that's what they named their life jackets in D-Day, but again it was another model with similar attributes, if you will. We do have a very nice sorry guys. We do have a very nice foundry mark here. Don't know how well you guys can see. The lighting's a bit weird today. The cast texture is not great. I'm going to have to come back and add some more, but that's pretty standard upgrades for any Sherman modeler. And again, it just gives us a little bit more hands-on with our projects, which I actually quite enjoy, if I'm honest. We have more brush guards here. They're a bit overscaled in the sense that they're very long, but they're not as thick as the brush guards on the other sprue. So that's kind of the unusual thing. So it's almost like they corrected them in different sprues. So I wonder, are they taking sprues from different kits that Academy have built over the years, and some are better quality than others? It would appear so. We have our headlights, our convoy lights for the front of the vehicle. These are kind of strange. I hope that these are clear. I don't think they are, but I have spares, so I'm going to switch them out because they're not great. So this kit's a bit of a mixed bag, but I'm not really like too upset with this kit so far. Moving on to Sprue G, this is our turret. The turret's actually quite nice. Quite nice. This is a high bustle design turret. Again, we have our integral loader's hatch. Again, the cast texture is very slight, and I'll have to come back in again and add to it. This is meant to be the grenade launcher tube, so they actually have like an integral mortar. It looks a bit like it's just like a piece of pipe with a screwable breech that you can put a grenade or a smoke grenade in. So you're gonna have to drill that out to make that accurate, because right now it's just a blemish in the plastic. We have our late war gun mantlet. Again, nice cast numbering here, as well as cast numbering on the split cupola, both on the hatches themselves and the cupola properly. Again, there should be some cast on these because these were cast design, as were all these basically. Then we have our slide molded gun barrel that defeats the purpose by somehow having a slide molded muzzle brake, or not muzzle brake, just muzzle. The slots on here and still gives you a seam anyway, so that's unusual. We have our lifting rings, these look okay, or the lifting eyes. Then we have the gunner or the commander's aiming frame. It's just basically a blob of plastic. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's just it's not as sharp as the Asuka model ones, but then again, Asuka is very sharp and some details are not on others. So that is our turret, and again, you're going to have to mold in the armored cheek on the gunner's side, I believe. And the reason why they had to do that was when they were upgrading, I think it was the gunner's sight or the stabilization station system, they had to mill away the inner face of the turret. So they made a weakness in the armor because of that. So that's why you see on other Shermans there was like applique armor on the cheek. That's nothing to do with ammunition. That's actually because the armor is weakest on that side. And then later on they began to actually internally mold an extra swell here or lip to bring that armor up, and that's not present here, so you're going to have to add that yourselves. Not very difficult. There's plenty of tutorials online and picture tutorials on how to do it. It's not a difficult thing. Just get some putty and just basically build up this little area here. It's not hard to do it, but again, something I feel you guys should be aware of. And of course there's going to be a seam line that you're going to have to hide here as well, but that's not a big problem. They're on to de-sprue, some accessories here. You see these in a lot of Academy kits, like their Stewart family has these as well. Tools are okay. I don't know what the hell that's meant to be. That's their 50 cal. That looks like a 20mm Orokin almost. It's so out of scale, so won't be using that. The M1919 is nice though. That's not bad. Bear in mind these sprues are about 10-15 years old, like and they certainly weren't bad for their time. They haven't aged all that well, unfortunately. We have a few other little tools here. They're not the worst I've seen. They're a little bit simplistic, but they're not too bad. And that's that sprue. That's just like a general accessory sprue that they throw in. So moving on to the sprues that have our running gear. So these are also called A sprue. We get two of these, which is strange because now there's two A sprues in the kit, or three if we count the two mirrors of this. And we have our buggies here, again with some nice cast numbering here. It might be a bit overscale, but it's nice that it's there. Then we have our road wheels. These are two-part with inserts, and then we have obviously the earlier version spoked road wheels. Again, so that might be handy to throw into your bits box. We also have options again for idler, solid, solid and spoked. And also we have some of the solid road wheels and spoked ones for the drives, or the sprocket should I say. God, I've forgotten. Detail's a bit weird on these actually. They seem to be a little bit chunky actually, but they should look fine once they're in place, but they do look a bit kind of beefy. So again, the scaling seems to be a bit weird on certain parts here, you know. So you have two of those sprues, and then we have another sprue here, and this is our sprue. So again, it's like a mix match of different parts, and we have replacement fenders, and these are a little bit more in scale. They're nicer than the originals. We have our large exhaust deflector. That's not too bad actually. That's not the worst I've seen. It's a little bit of weird kind of flashing going on here, but a little bit of cleanup. Literally, they just like pass a file over it and it's fine. And then we also have again more options, and these are the later world bogies by the looks of it. And again, there is numbering again found on these. That's really cool. So we have options, and these are better than the other ones really. They seem a bit more in scale. Then we have H sprue, again some more accessories. We have some 50 cal boxes, some of the spare track holders, and again we have the pads down here. We have the first aid or telephone box, or here should I say. These are British style ammo boxes, so they're not really applicable to US vehicles. We have some American style canteens. We have some handy jerry can holders if you ever wanted to weld them onto the back of the vehicle. Some of them had it, some of them didn't. And then we have some cool little things here. These are parts you can shave off, and you can get, I'll pull this in for you to have a proper look. Hopefully it will focus. So these are cast numbers, so foundry markings. So that's kind of cool that we have those. I've never had much luck trying to cut those off. They always seem to go a bit awry with me, or I slice them in half. We also have a few different rivets and tie downs. So that's kind of cool that they're included. And a few jerry cans. So again, that's just like a random accessory pack. And then the last sprues, or should I say there's a little bit more. So this is a mixture of modern parts. So that looks like a 40mm grenade launcher ammo kit. So that looks like for a Mark 19 grenade launcher. However, I see some barrels for a 50 cal machine gun here. These are slide molded and they actually are hollow. Where's the receiver? So I'm seeing parts for 50s. I see the dust cover, but I'm not actually seeing the actual receiver, the body of the gun, if you will. It's on this one. Then we have an updated direct cupola. Bit more detail, again 2 pin marks on the loader's hatch. Kind of again chunky brush guards. The purse clips on these are more on scale though. These aren't as ridiculously chunky. So I have a feeling we'll be taking different parts from different sprues. And this is, oh here it is, sorry. It came off in the bag. Okay, this is nice. And this is the receiver for the 50 cal or the HB. The Browning. That's actually not bad, that's really nice. Separate barrels so you can do different marks and different eras of the gun. Because this weapon's been in service for a very long time now. I think it's about almost pushing 80 years. So yeah, that's good. That's much better than the ones that they had in the box up till this point. So you have different shrouds and then different barrels. So that's really cool. So I'm definitely putting that into the bits box. That's handy. And if I can find these on their own, I'll definitely use them. Because the Asuka Model 50s, though they're beautiful, are really expensive. And then the final part that we've all been waiting for, if you're still watching after 30 odd minutes of me harping on, is the rocket system. So this is from Italeri, and you can tell that by the shape or the shade of plastic. It's a different colour. It's slightly paler grey. So again, the banks are in 2 halves, and the detail's pretty nice. No, there's a little bit of flashing here at the end of the barrels. I don't know how well you boys can see that. The 2 arms again are in 2 halves. And then, but the good thing is that the caps for the rockets, the actual end caps for the tubes, are one piece. So in reality, you just have to make sure you get a good fit between the upper and lower on the sides and on the tops. Shouldn't be too difficult, he says now, but hopefully if the reviews I've read online of this, of guys who've actually built this, are to be true, these aren't too bad. So again, it's a bit of a mixed match of parts in this kit, but I've heard that this builds up pretty nicely if you invest a bit of time and effort into building it. So there you have my very, very long-winded review of Academy's 1/35 scale M4A3 with T34 Calliope or Calliope or whatever the hell you want to call it, rocket system. It is very cool. I'm really looking forward to building these because I think this one looks deadly, and if I do a good job, it'll look really cool in the collection, as it's a very striking Sherman variant. It does require work. Again, with the turret, adding replacement well seams, there's certain other details that might have to be switched out with photo etch. But other than that, I think it will build up to a nice kit. I do have some cool ideas what I want to do with mine. So guys, I would recommend it with the caveat that you will have to do work on it if you want it to be an accurate model. If not, if you want to build out of the box, from what I've heard, with the exception of trying to line up the rocket system to the turret, it's meant to be a nice fun build. So it can be both a challenging build if you want to challenge yourself, or just out of the box, you can have some fun with it. So I would recommend it just with those recommendations in mind. So guys, thank you for watching for this long. I've been Shane, hope you have a great whole day, and I'll catch you in the next video.